So hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us, for taking time from your busy schedule. We will be recording this webinar, so you can share the link with your colleagues, friends at a later date. I'm Cindy Davidson, and I am Director of Business Solutions here at Corexcel. I'm with my colleague, Andrea. We work with executives and HR professionals on solutions related to communication, teamwork, sales, leadership development challenges, and it also includes what we're talking about today, culture. We're specifically focusing on how style impacts culture. So we'll first go quickly through what is culture, where does it come from, and then I'm going to focus on 5 Ps, 5 ways style impacts culture. There are many other things, but that's where we're going today. We'll connect it to customers and business results. What does culture mean? And then really get you thinking about, is your desired culture different than your current one, and what you might want to consider regarding that. So first, what is culture? It's a bit abstract. Culture in general, when you Google it and look it up, they define it as the arts and other manifestations of human intellectual achievement regarded collectively, such as, we've all heard the phrase 20th century popular culture. It can be defined as customs, arts, social institutions, and achievements of a particular people, nation, or other social group. Here we're talking about workplace culture, which is still also very abstract and sometimes hard to define, but we can look at it as it is characteristics, right, of a team, a certain group of people, your organization, your company, shared values, shared thoughts, beliefs, and attitudes. I say here, I have in parentheses tolerated behavior as opposed to acceptable, because tolerated behavior does become sort of your culture. Culture does include rituals, but it is learned, it is not innate. Where does it come from? A lot of your organizations may have history that they talk about, and legends. Comes from goals and missions. Policies and rules, and this is kind of an interesting one. If they are known and followed, it's certainly impacting your culture. But sometimes people find that their culture has actually evolved past long-standing policies and rules, kind of like our laws out there. When you look at laws that are 100 years old and people go, gosh, what's that? I've never heard of it. So that's why it's always a good idea to kind of revisit your policies and rules. Again, on the behavior that's tolerated, that absolutely feeds right into your culture. Certainly the relationships within your group. And what we're talking about today is style. So how does this style of your leadership impact your culture? How about the style of your team members? That's where culture comes from. And that's most profound. So as I mentioned earlier, we kind of boiled this down to what we call our 5 Ps. There are certainly other ways style impacts culture, but these are the main ones that we've identified. So pace, the pace at which decisions are made and work gets done in your culture, in your team, your group. How about the process for making decisions and getting things done? Perfection, standards by which decisions and work are measured. Perspective on risk. What kind of risk does your organization take? And how predictable is your workplace? Is it very predictable and a calm workplace, or is it unpredictable and ever-changing? I would think probably more than not, you are experiencing an unpredictable workplace. And one that is fast-paced. Pace is the first style attribute we're going to talk about. Either a fast-paced or a moderate-paced culture, and anywhere in between feels very different from each other, correct? So if you look at 2 positive aspects of each, like on the left, fast-paced, if you work in that type of culture, you'll see quick decisions, a drive toward results, And that's really comfortable to a lot of people. The downside is it can lead to tension and burnout, whereby a more moderate paced culture really focuses on perhaps a job done in a certain way, maybe the right way. It's a more relaxed atmosphere. But in this environment, it may give up some competitive edge. I'm often asked by customers, how can they best bridge the gap between a fast-paced driven culture? Because it seems like as time goes on and everything I read about goes into this thinking that, my gosh, our workplaces keep getting faster and faster and faster. So how do they bridge that gap between that culture and employees who are more moderate paced? So think for a moment about that challenge in your organization and also the opposite one. I've certainly seen workplaces that are more moderate paced and they hire a fast paced driven employee, and oh my goodness, that employee is not apt to feel really a part of that culture. So that's the first kind of influence there. How about on process? So when we talk about process, it's more about communication process. Is it more acceptable in your culture to be independent? Are there lots of opportunities for individuals to stand out? Does it cultivate that self-starter? That's great, but it can discourage teamwork. And again, that could be okay. How about being more collaborative that encourages collective brainstorming, allows for a high level of teamwork, but someone who is desiring that opportunity to stand out may not feel as welcomed in that type of culture. So as we mentioned previously, individuals are affected differently by the style of their culture based on their individual style. Is it the same or different? Here's kind of a little look at it. A collaborative culture might look like this to two different employees. The one is like, oh gosh, I don't need everyone's opinion. And the other one is very comfortable. So in this scenario, that employee on the right most likely has the style that is dominating her culture and creating the most acceptable behavior and therefore the best feeling for her to be a part of. Moving on to number 3, perfection. What we mean by this is the definition and standards of perfection. Are there particular ways things need to be done? Do all options need to be examined in your culture and all risk removed before moving forward? Well, in some workplaces, that's true. There's little margin for error. We certainly know the example of airline pilots, right? Physicians performing surgeries, nurses administering drugs, where a certain way is paramount. In others, decision-making and those decisions are more a product of preference and low risk. So we're not talking about life or death. It might just be, one approach versus another, many right answers. But in that perfectionist, you're looking at, exceptional quality. There's reliable and precision. And there are cultures like that. There are people that have their styles like that as well. And again, the downside is could miss opportunities where in a more relaxed culture that where there are a lot more acceptable solutions, it encourages innovation. You can get more done in less time, but there may be too much compromise. So again, in each of these, when you think about style and culture, there is a balance always that we need to examine. So culture based on accuracy, again, may look like this to two different employees based on the employee's style preferences. Someone who has a more compromising style might not be so comfortable in that culture that's driven to ask a lot of questions to get to a specific answer, the minute detail. And our 4th P addresses risk. What's the tolerance of the culture for risk? In a risk-taking environment, people are bold. It's a dynamic and innovative atmosphere. There are lots of new accomplishments being pushed for, but it may be too risky in some instances. How about a more cautious, where there's calculated risk, clarifies expectations? Again, it's either taking risk, missing opportunities on the other side. Always benefits and downfalls. And this is what, again, it might look like to employees. Someone thinks, wow, I love this. I love this culture. I love this leader who is bold and dynamic, getting things done. And someone else may take a look at this and say, wow, I just think we make too many shortcuts, and our leadership makes too many shortcuts. And finally, the last one is predictability. How changes are made. Do you live in a predictable world? Again, promotes a more relaxed atmosphere, feelings of comfort and security, or is it pretty unpredictable? And that may be the demands of your customers and your market, where you have to constantly innovate. It's certainly in an unpredictable culture, one that goes through a lot of change, can feel chaotic to individuals as opposed to one that's not, but a more predictable may fail to challenge ideas that have been around for a long time and may not be keeping up with what's going on. And here you see two illustrations, one that's not looking forward to change and one that's just quite comfortable making adjustments. So again, just quickly, we talked about all these 5 ways style impacts culture. And what you want to consider here in your culture, some questions. So how does the style of your leaders affect your culture or your desired culture? How about the style of your team members on the other side? Does your current culture affect these? Because certainly we talk through when you've got cultures that have different attributes, they do affect employees in different ways based on their style. So think about too then how the information impacts your hiring process, because that's where it starts. If you have a desire to change your culture, to take your culture from where it is today to something else. So it just means that it doesn't mean you don't bring on a team member because of their style. It means you consider their style, and you always want to consider the challenges they're going to experience integrating into your culture and the challenges you're going to experience helping that individual integrate as well. It's conversations and planning, because you don't want new hires to be out the door in 90 days, right? And the last is, what are our customers demanding of us, and how does that impact what culture we need to move to if it's one of different than today? Again, it's a two-way street when it comes to customers and results. For example, perhaps you lose opportunity if you don't respond to customers in a certain period of time. There's a lot of writing about, gosh, how can we stop the madness? How can we slow down a little bit and slow down our workplaces? On the other side, according to HubSpot, for example, the odds of making a successful contact with a lead coming to your business are 100 times greater when the contact attempt back to that potential customer occurs within the first 5 minutes. And that's compared with waiting 30 minutes. It's 100 times greater. And the odds of that lead actually becoming qualified and perhaps working with you down the line are 21 times greater using that same time period. So we're just talking about a difference of 25 minutes here. And that's all being driven by the internet and customers wanting information fast. They go through now their own research, and by the time they get to you, they're halfway through perhaps the sales process, for example. So it's a tough one. But what we all have to do is just understand how to respond without making our workplaces chaotic. It is quite a challenge, but there is so much writing on burnout hurting companies' abilities to retain people. So again, look at how customers impact your culture on pace, and can you do anything about that pace? Are there negotiations that can go on? How about, your customers may look to you to be very collaborative. Certainly, they define what they mean by accuracy and creativity. And regardless, we all are probably required to come across that our workplaces are very calm. It's sort of like that old adage of, we're paddling beneath the surface, but certainly need to appear to our constituencies that we have things under control. I love this picture because it really does hit all of these in terms of pace, collaboration. I'm looking at the risk here in this picture, but lots going on in terms of how style could impact this particular culture. More questions to consider about your current culture. So if you are looking to migrate into something different, you really have to look at what does work for you and what doesn't. And I would start with the 5 Ps because they are really the keys, we think. What works and what doesn't. Is your pace working? What is your new way of being if it's not working? What's your desired culture look like? And if there are changes there, what does that mean in terms of the agreements that you make with your leaders and with your employees, with your team members? What's different? What does it look like? And how do you move forward? Why is it all important to examine, again, your culture and your desired culture? Perhaps it impacts everything. So think about it. And it will impact the way you hire, the way you give feedback on performance, make decisions, run meetings, the way you operate day to day. So if you have a culture that is not working for you, either because of the team that's there, your leadership, or your customers, again, I would go back and look at some of the questions that you want to ask and some of the examinations you want to make. So can any employee succeed in any culture? I say yes, if you so desire. You or an employee that you are working with should really just think about, okay, here's the given culture. We've decided that this is the culture that works for us. Let's take it down that path. So given my style, my particular style, what helps me in this culture, what's easy for me, or what stands in the way? In what context could my traits be most beneficial? So those that are easy for me, where can I lean into those? Where can they be best applied? And what does that mean in terms of the conversations that I have with my leadership and my team members? And by the same token, on the other side, how about my traits that are most detrimental? So if I am fast-paced and I work in a moderate-paced culture, what can I do specifically? What plans can I put in place? How can I change my thoughts and behavior that will work best? Where do I need to stretch so that I slow down and become more moderate-paced and perhaps focused in a different area than my tendency wants to allow me to? Again, you think about the traits that are most different from culture, those that cause the most stress and the most discomfort, and that's where you want to focus on helping yourself or helping others. Because when we are aligned with our culture, we're most productive. That's what everything tells us, all the research tells us. And that when we are aligned, we are more engaged. And that results in higher profits for our organizations. It's really, really exciting. And it's also not just more profitable, but let's face it, whenever we're aligned, it certainly is a whole lot more enjoyable. And there are more benefits than just the financial ones for maintaining a stable workforce. So I hope I've given you some good food for thought about how styles impact culture, and the other way around, again, how culture impacts teams. And if I've inspired you and you're interested in discovering what this looks like in particular for your team, I'd love to schedule a time for further discussion. So we have some amazing resources and tools that can help you in the journey.